Hi, I'm Richard Sefton, and this is my podcast, State of Mind with Richard Sefton. Sometimes it helps us to vent, to talk, to get things off our chest, and that can be to a friend, a neighbour, a family member, a stranger, a pet, even to ourselves. It just helps to get that internal narrative out of our heads, out of our brains, into the outside, where we can see it, listen to it, view it differently. For that, we could do with somebody to listen, and in this case, that's me. So sit down, chill out, relax, put your feet up, and listen to this podcast, and hopefully you can see the benefit of having a good old natter. My guest today is a newsreader, broadcaster, journalist and reality TV star. I watched her in Celebrity Big Brother and loved how direct she was. Watching her on programmes across the years, it's quite evident to me that this person is a fighter and not scared to hold a controversial viewpoint. And I want to understand a little more, so I'm very pleased to welcome India Willoughby. Hello India, how are you?
Hi Richard, thank you so much for inviting me on. You've just been telling me how hot it is where you are today, and you've had to shut the window, etc. So I have this picture in my head of you just sitting there casually in your boxer shorts and socks, chatting away. That's the image I'm going to hold on to.
No socks, but I have just rolled up my top, so I'm almost topless. It's not a pretty sight after lockdown.
Oh dear.
How's lockdown been for you? How's the last year been?
Yeah, you know what, it hasn't bothered me too much. I'm quite happy with my own company anyway. I've missed, the social side of things, like most people have, and not seeing family and friends. But it hasn't been too traumatic. I know some people who are really gregarious, and we all know these type of individuals. They can't survive without a group around them. And I think for that type of individual, it's been really tough.
So where have you spent most of your time then? In London or? Yeah,
for the big blocks of lockdown, I've actually come back up north to Newcastle, just purely for practical reasons. Really, I have family around here, family who live on their own. So obviously, if something happened, it's much better me being close than down in London. And where I live in London, in Hampstead, in North London, which is very posh, they have this weird rule. They have this weird bylaw. It's so posh, they don't actually allow supermarkets.
Really?
In Hampstead, because it lowers the tone. So actually getting food, etc., you're reliant solely on booking deliveries, which, as you can imagine, in London, you could put an order in and be 3 weeks waiting on something, and they turn up and there's just a skeleton sat in a chair. The one concession they do make in Hampstead, they have a tiny Tesco Metro, which is, I've been in newsagent shops that are bigger, to be honest. So that you can buy tins of beans, Heinz tomato soup, etc. But long term, the sort of lockdowns we've having, I need an Aldi or a Morrison's or an Asda nearby.
Yeah, we've got a nice big Aldi, a nice big Tesco, Asda. We've got it all here. Move to North Wales.
Great.
I suppose you've got it all where you are. Then.
Yeah, I love Wales, by the way. It's fantastic. We used to go on holiday in Wales. Love it.
Really? Whereabouts are you from? Cumbria, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you used to come down to North Wales, or?
Yeah, North Wales. And the other thing interesting about that, I've always felt an affinity with Wales, because growing up in Carlisle, which is near Penrith, a lot of people, when you go around the country, they say, well, where are you from? And say, oh, well, I'm from Carlisle. And they say, oh yes, in Wales. Isn't that near Penrith? And they always use Penrith. Obviously, it sounds Welsh for some reason, but there we go.
Yeah, one of my favourite places is called Penmon, which isn't a million miles away from Penrith. Well, it is actually, geographically, but verbally, no, it's not. I used to work at a pub in Hampstead. It was either called the King William or the King Edward.
Oh, King William.
King William.
It's a great pub. They have a rich history. Yeah, fantastic. And they have an oyster stall. Sorry, not an oyster stall. They have French
Yes, they had that when I worked there years
ago.
Like crepes and stuff like
crepes that. Crepes outside that the guy makes. But it's a great pub, the King William is it the 5th? King William the 5th.
Do you know what? You've just really you've just evoked a memory that was long gone. I've just proper pictured the place in my head.
Lots of live music, and if I
Yeah.
can make the picture for everyone listening, Hampstead is, as I say, it's a bit hoity-toity, but it's nice with it. It's not like super posh, but there are a lot of people in the entertainment industry or film industry that live in Hampstead, and when you go in this pub,
George Michael.
all the locals are on the wall, all the local people that live in Hampstead and frequented the King William. So you have George Michael, you have Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor. I could go on for ages. Ricky Gervais is there. All these famous people. It's wall to wall, but it's a lovely pub. It's like a proper boozer, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
People go in, and it's not like people politely clinking glasses. It's a proper pub.
Yeah, I worked in 2 pubs at the same time, so it was a bit of a busy time. It was back when I was probably 20, 21, and it was Twin Towers time. When was that? 2001.
Yeah.
So we're talking 20 years ago. I've just given away my age. Actually, no, so I must have been 19 then.
You must have been younger.
I must have been 19 because I'm this side of 40. Just. Just. That's about to change this year.
Great.
So what was your childhood like then?
My childhood was perfectly normal. I had a happy childhood, no stress or trauma or anything. Great family. Didn't have any really issues, except for the one thing, which is fairly obvious about me, which I can't remember not knowing. Actually,
Oh, really?
so I always knew, but it never freaked me out as a kid so much that it caused me immense distress. Not there were the odd day or two, but I think in my situation it's almost like being Stockholm. If people know what Stockholm syndrome is, when that basically means if you're taken prisoner by someone, you learn to love the prisoner. And if somebody said something bad about the prisoner, you would defend, because you're just in that space all the time. And that's where it's a bit like growing up trans, because inside who you are. But certainly in the time that I was growing up, the 70s was mainly my childhood. If you'd have let anyone
really
know that you were trans, you would have been carted off, and
Did you know what
you would have
trans
been
was
laughed
back
at.
then?
No, I didn't know. I just
Was there
it
anyone
was
in
really,
the media? Or?
honestly, there was nobody, but it was really easy. Honestly, it was so easy for me, Richard, in terms of getting my head around it. I was just a girl, and I knew that from day one. It wasn't something that I thought about or contemplated or should I choose. It was just me. But because of how society is, and I knew that everyone expected me to a boy, you think, oh right, I better buckle down and try and be this person. And you can make a stab at it. You can have a go. But that thing in your head, who you actually are, it doesn't change. It would be the same as any woman being born, any girl, taking them at 3 and saying, right, we're going to bring you up as a boy. They could do it. They could do all the performance things. They can think, but they're going to eventually. Do you know what? Actually, guys, I'm a girl, and it'd be great to be treated like a girl. And that's just how it was for me. There was nothing. As I say, there was nothing traumatic or revelationary about it. That's just who I was. The hardest bit was actually learning to be the boy who I was. And I can remember when I started school, my most vivid memory of my first few days at school was, I don't know if they still do this in junior schools, they used to have story time at the end of the day when you did all the sort of class stuff, but then when you were like 5, you would have a half hour or so where everyone sat down, crossed legs, with the Indian style, with the teacher on a chair, but all the kids were on the floor, and she read a story. And this particular day, she was doing the sugar and spice rhyme, what a little boy's made of, what a little girl's made of, sugar and spice, all that sort of thing. And she went through that, and then she says, right, class, can you tell me, you know, what little girls are made of, and can all the girls stick their hands up? And I stuck my hand up, but I wasn't. It was just a natural thing to do. But the teacher started laughing at me, and then the whole class started laughing at me. And I can even remember that when I was, honestly, I would be 5. And just think, I just didn't get what they were laughing at. It just didn't make sense to me. So I've always known, but, you know, you sort of buckle down, and because of all the prejudice and hatred and bigotry out there, you try and get on, but eventually you've got to be yourself.
So in a way, you were born India.
Well, yeah, I was born a boy, but I always knew.
That's really beautiful. I've not heard that like with no confusion and just the resolute. I am what I am.
It's actually it's really common, Richard.
Yeah.
You know, there's always a big brouhaha in the papers or you know, on radio stations or on TV when stories come out. There was one recently, a couple of weeks back, where a 2-year-old had said, "Oh, I'm a girl," you know, or a 3-year-old says it, and what always comes back at that, the retort to that from people who do their best to rubbish trans people, is, how can a child possibly know at 3 years old that, you know, they're a girl or a boy? You know, I used to be a dinosaur. I didn't know what I... Well, first of all, you know, what you had for dinner or whether you play acted a dinosaur has actually got nothing to do with trans. It's just a completely separate thing. And what I say to those people is, how old were you when you... And in fact, I'll ask you, just as I know you're on side and everything, but I'll just ask you, and I know what your answer will be. Richard, I'll ask you specifically, Richard, how old were you when you realised you were a boy? You'll probably say you can't remember even thinking about it.
It's just there, isn't it? And
because it's just there.
Yeah,
and that's
pushed in certain ways, though. That's the bit that...
That's right.
I think
and the idea...
About your story.
Yeah, the idea that somebody who's 2 or 3 isn't allowed to say who they are and has to wait until they're 18... You know, you've got to do all these things. You've got to wait until you're 18 until you can decide. Why is it different for trans kids than all other kids? Are trans kids not allowed to know who they are at 3? Is that wrong? Are they you know?
I suppose it's a massive learning curve, because probably back in the distant future, I used to say stuff along the lines of, well, I really liked playing with girls' toys. And I know this is maybe making it really simplified. I used to love girls' toys, and it used to worry me that I liked girls' toys from as far back as I remember, like 5, 6 maybe. And I used to keep it to myself. I wanted to play with the dolls. And as an adult, I used to think, oh, so would I have been, you know, in my old vocabulary, would I have been pushed to believe that I was trans? I now know, and I can now look back and think, yeah, I used to play with girls' toys, but I knew that I was a boy, and I knew that I was a slightly different boy to a lot of the others, but not in that way. I wasn't a girl. I was a boy that wanted to play with girls' toys, which is a completely different thing. So for me, it's a learning thing.
Yeah. And what I would just say there quickly, you know, again, a lot of people actually come up with this thing about, oh, well, I used to play with dolls and I used to...
And I was one of them.
You know, and that is absolutely cool, and I would endorse it, and I think it's terrific and what have you.
I'm not one of them now. I was one.
It's not the same as being trans. When you're trans, you just know who you are, and no amount of nagging will change that. You know, I was just talking there about my childhood was a normal boy childhood. I loved football. I did all the sort of climbing trees stuff and all that. So I just wasn't into, you know, dolls or anything like that. But that has got nothing to do with trans. It's just like literally a toy, and it's just another one of these. I know you weren't saying it in this way, but it's one of these propositions that critics of trans would say, oh, well, you know, just because they play with a doll, you know, it doesn't make them trans. Well, nobody's saying that. except for you. The criteria for actually when the doctors get involved, or what have you, is persistent and consistent. That's the phrase. That's the sort of biblical quote that covers trans, and you literally have to stick to it from the day you're like 2 or 3 until you're 10 or 11. It's not like this. If you read the papers, you would literally think they're picking up babies and taking them to some factory, and for some bizarre reason which no one's ever explained to me, changing people's sex. And then the final thing just on this little bit was, this idea that kids are pushed into being trans. Why on earth
Why
would you say, here's a kid here and it's like normal kid, it's quite happy as it is, but do you know what? As a parent, I'm going to try and force this child to be the opposite sex. And let me say, you try that with your average kid and see what reaction you get. It's just absolutely ludicrous. All the bad things that are said about trans people, they're straight out of a B movie on ITV at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They fall apart.
Well, sensationalist headlines they sell, I suppose, don't they? And if they
Yeah.
can get people, it always seems if they can get someone to hate someone, they'll sell more papers or they'll get more viewers or something like that. And I don't understand this need to hate people for wanting to be something that's nothing to do with you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's dreadful, Richard. I've actually, I don't know if you saw my Twitter feed yesterday. I had to come off social media because it's just so bad, and it's dreadful. Trans people are the new Jews, which I know people will be upset me saying that.
Yeah.
But the caveat I'll give is, I do have Jewish blood, and trans people were among those who were given pink triangles and marched off. And I say that trans people are the new Jews because yesterday the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, which is a UK body, and as the name suggests, Equality Human Rights Commission, suggests that it's out there to look after vulnerable groups and protect human rights. They actually came out. They've been stuffed with new appointments by this government at the moment, and they came out and said it's fine for gender critical. Gender critical, by the way, is the polite phrase that's now used by transphobes. It's
Gender
okay.
critical.
Yeah, it's okay for gender critical feminists to call trans women men. And we're not protecting the trans people. We are going to protect the right of the gender critical feminists to do this, and you can't be questioned.
So that's
And
backwards to me.
it's the other way
around.
around. Support is being withdrawn. I look around, Richard, and where are the trans people in the world? There are none. They're disenfranchised. We are getting to a stage soon where employers will think twice about taking trans people on. Everything you see in the press or on social media is that trans people are either dangerous or deluded. Yesterday, I had a lot of people come on but again, these are bizarre associations. I wasn't even doing anything, purely because I'm trans. They started talking about Michael Jackson and paedophilia and linking it to and I'm thinking, what? Hold up, what have I got to do with Michael Jackson or paedophilia? It's just something different. But it's this unrelenting demonisation that is going on. And papers like the Times and the Daily Mail and the BBC and ITV are an absolute disgrace. They don't talk to me about diversity, ITV and BBC. Please don't talk to me about diversity. You have no one from my area. It doesn't have to be me. I'm sure there are plenty more out there. But you have no one. And yet you go on about, we are what we see. Well, I'm afraid that trans people have nothing. We are completely and utterly disenfranchised.
That's really, really sad to hear that, because there would have been a time when I not in my lifetime, thankfully, but there'd be no gay people on the TV
Yeah.
and no one that I could identify with.
Yeah.
Thankfully, since the 80s, we've had a steady stream. I know that it was maybe a little bit more underground and hidden. People like Dale Winton and Michael Barrymore that presented one way, but then they came out. Because they were able to later on, but they were there, and we kind of knew it, and they kind of it brought up the conversation of normality around homosexuality.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're talking about is the normality seems to be, oh, but this man went into a women's changing rooms once, and that
Exactly.
seems to be the narrative.
Yeah, and it's not a man who's gone into women's changing rooms. It's a woman who happened to be born trans.
Yeah.
That's the difference, they say. And the other thing that happened yesterday, the Equalities Human Rights Commission, again, I'm astounded at this. They've actually withdrawn any association with Stonewall, who we know that Stonewall are effectively the governing body, the protective cloak around LGBT people. So the Equality and Human Rights Commission are now saying that Stonewall, they're encouraging Stonewall to withdraw their support and protection of trans people. That was the crux. And Stonewall says, we're not going to do that. So because they wouldn't stand back, and they were going to stand up and protect us in some ways, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission have said, right, we're not supporting Stonewall. That's how bad the persecution level is. And just picking up on what you said, I think that this is really interesting, about when you have Dale Winton and other gay performers who've broken into TV or what, I mean, I can remember going back to the 70s as a kid, the only type of gay man you would see on TV was somebody who played up to the gay, very camp stereotype. So they had to be extremely over the top, and they were always, exclusively, they were a figure of fun.
Yeah.
They were an individual who got on the stage as a gay guy, and they usually told actually homophobic jokes or self-deprecating jokes about themselves, essentially giving viewers permission to laugh at gay men.
Yeah, and that still bleeds into 2021.
And it's dreadful. It's absolutely appalling. So the only way, this is what I mean about this industry is rotten. TV and the media, they make a big thing about diversity and and all this sort of thing, but it's conditional diversity. You get to go on providing you play the part, the caricature, the stereotype that they expect. How long did we have to wait until we saw gay men on TV who are just, for want of a better word, and I use this and normal. I hope people take in normal, as in that you would see the individual on TV and you wouldn't know what their sexuality or whatever was. They were just a character, or they were just a presenter, or they were a regular member of the human race. They didn't have to have heightened characteristics that flagged up who they were. How long did we have to wait for that to happen?
Too long.
Too long. It's crazy.
And it's a massive thing where our mental health's concerned, because we fall into those categories then, and we end up putting ourselves alongside those people and following those people because we feel that we have to be in that box. And like I said, it bleeds into 2021, and I've had people say to me, I love gay people, they're so much fun, they're always a laugh. Well, not always. We come in many shapes and sizes.
Yeah. I agree. And there's also this view that you're touching on there, that everybody who belongs to a certain grouping or demographic has to sing from the same hymn sheet. Mm-hmm. You know, why do we think that? Why do we think that all gay men will have the same views, or all trans people will be of the same views? We don't think that all people with brown eyes think the same way. So why is that? And this, in the reverse way, if you like, I think this is a big fault of the LGBT activism, political side, because I as I said at the very start of this chat, which I'm enjoying a lot, I've never really put myself in any box. I'm definitely not an activist or anything like that. I'm just me, and I just want a regular, normal life. I happen to be trans, but that's like, a small part of me. But I think that LGBT, certainly over the last 5 years, have been their own worst enemy. They've got a lot of people's backs up.
In what way?
Because I think they've been, on certain subjects, they're too aggressive. I mean, I can only talk about my own area, really. And things, trans, as the name implies, transition, always historically has been about going from one to another. And then once that is finished, that's it. It's over. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not in a transitional state at the moment. I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy as I am. But 5 years ago, it completely changed. You've got people coming in, the gender non-binary thing, where you're neither one or the other. You ebb and flow, and some days you feel this and some days you feel that. And that's fine. I'm not disputing that at all. And I think those people, they definitely should not be stigmatized in any way or singled out. But my point is, and this is when everyone gets angry, and I don't want it to be angry. All I'm saying is that state of mind, that state of being, is completely and utterly different from a trans person who transitions. The thought, that the idea that a trans person is happy forever and a day, living in limbo and floating about back and forth, is just pure it's the complete opposite. Yeah, it's taken over the trans narrative. And then you get into the self-ID thing, where, again, and I apologise for this, I generally don't mean this offensive, but when I was growing up, if you didn't transition, wearing the clothes of the opposite sex, that was like being transvestite. And again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being a transvestite. It's completely harmless. There's a lot of rubbish being talked about transvestites over the air. Absolute garbage, completely harmless. But again, being a transvestite, with the greatest respect, is not the same as being born trans, where you physically transition. And LGBT, for some reason, decided, do you know what would be a good idea? Let's just make it really simple. Let's call all those people just trans and shove them together. So you now have people who transition, who have the medical condition, gender dysphoria. You have people who say, I ebb and flow, and on a Monday I'm this, and on Wednesday that, which is fine. And then you have transvestites who dress up for a whole host of reasons, okay? But I think a fair person would say that they have completely different motives or goals in lives. Non-binary people actively, then this is where Stonewall get themselves in a hole. Stonewall represent all of those people, and Stonewall over the last few years have been telling the government, we don't need doctors to transition. Trans people don't want doctors to transition. You don't need surgery to be a woman. You can do this. So the government listened to that. But then Stonewall also represent people like me. And people like me are on 5-year waiting lists because there's, 2 gender clinics in the UK. 5 years for a first appointment. So how...
2 gender clinics in the whole of the UK?
Yes. So how you... I'll ask you, Richard. How would you feel as somebody who's completely removed from the conversation, you have no knowledge on this subject, and an organisation comes to you, and on the Monday they say, well, look, trans people don't need surgery, they don't want doctors, and then by Friday that same organisation is coming to you and saying, it's a disgrace, we've got trans people on a waiting list, we need more doctors, we need more... It's contradictory.
I suppose you'd lose trust in that organisation.
Well, they come across as they don't know what they're talking about. because it's two complete polar opposites. So it's been a nightmare, and unfortunately, I don't want Stonewall to end. I think they've made some terrible tactical moves over the last 5 years, but they are a good organisation at heart. Their heart is in the right place. Excuse me, little cough. So I don't want to see Stonewall finish or anything, but their decisions have been appalling, and unfortunately they just give open goals for these ludicrous haters, these Westboro Baptist Church types who are just fundamentally opposed to trans people. They give them open goals because you sound credible. Again, Stonewall saying that trans women should be able to compete in professional sport. Now look, I want trans people accepted in life. I don't want any things, but you have to be realistic, and especially if you're factoring in self-ID, where people aren't changing their body chemistry in any way. How can you possibly have somebody like that going into a women's boxing bout or playing in a women's? It's honestly, it just makes trans look insane, and it plays right into the hands of the haters.
Yeah, it's almost, to be cynical, it sounds almost designed to do that.
Well, yeah, I think there are a lot of people on the LGBT activism side.
There's the LGB movement, isn't there?
Yeah, but again, they're vile. They're called LGB Alliance, and they've only been formed because trans people are here. Their one mission statement is to wipe out trans people. And again, I go back to the thing about trans being the new Jews. What is the end game here? You have papers like the Times and the Daily Mail, unrelenting. Every story, and I challenge anyone listening to this to go on Google and find a positive trans story in the mainstream press, not in the LGBT press, because of course they're going to write positive. I mean in the mainstream, the general public thing. What is the end game of this narrative where doors are being shut on trans people? It is the eradication of trans. There's even, you might be aware of this, Richard, at the moment the government have been bringing in legislation to stop conversion therapy. Now, we would all applaud that. I'm sure every decent person would say that's a good thing. But this groundswell of opinion of now movements like LGB Alliance, etc., have stepped in and said, "Well, hold on a sec. We support the ban on conversion of gay people, but trans people. Do you know? I think trans people should be sent for therapy, because I think if you send trans people for therapy, we could turn them gay. We could make them gay. Well, that is conversion therapy. Yeah. I'm sorry, no one in their right mind would choose to be trans. With the greatest respect, it's 1,000 times harder than being gay or lesbian. 1,000 times.
Before I knew what the LGB Alliance was, this is why I got sucked in, because of the opposite. I was thinking, why are trans people, why is it automatically assumed that they're lesbian or gay or bisexual?
Yeah.
So I kind of thought, they should have their own community, and we should all stand alongside them. It wasn't like an anti-trans thing. And then I read what they were about, and I was thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I even... Do you know what I mean? I can't even, me...
Well, the whole movement, this is a coordinated movement, and it's not just LGB Alliance. That you have religious groups involved, you have the press involved, which breaks my heart at the moment. And this is all about, in a very slow way, just as Hitler did with I keep going on about it, but it's the same sort of thing, where you slowly, you remove support, you remove protections, and you end up, the end game is the eradication of trans people. That is where we're heading, and
that's scary.
It terrifies me. I can't believe it happens. When just going back to it, I would love to be able to switch on my TV one day and there to be, a trans character who isn't there because they're trans on the TV. You know, there may be the landlord or the landlady of the Queen Vic or something, or switch on the TV and see like a daytime show, and there's a trans person there just doing a job, not because
They're trans.
trans
Yeah.
is the subject or they're there to tick a box, but just doing a job. And unless you start doing that, and you all know this as a gay guy, unless you start having people integrated into society just as regular human beings, nothing changes. It's no good. If we lived in a world where the only time you saw a gay man was when there was a gay storyline or doing something overly gay, well, that's not acceptance, is it?
No.
It's not. You're just reinforcing a stereotype and doing tick box equality. It's not good enough. It's tokenism.
My heart's breaking now because I'm thinking this is just you. This is just you, and you're persecuted for it on
Yeah.
many levels. You know, what we read in the papers, like I said before, are the prisoners that want to go to a woman's prison just to rape, and I because just being a trans ally on Twitter, on social media, you get it in the neck. So I feel, I mean, a couple of my friends, they get it so much, and it's coming all the time on all fronts, and it must be so stressful to constantly have to fight just to be who you are.
It's exhausting. I honestly, the saddest thing about this, everyone who knows me, and I can say this with confidence, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, you know, all through my life, I've relied on my humour. I love humour. I can be a bit risque sometimes, and maybe say something that somebody else wouldn't say. But I have a good heart. You know, I can't stand bullies. I don't want anyone marginalised, or anything like that. I have a good heart, and I always used to have a laugh and humour, and that was the big. If people talked about me, they would always say, "Oh yeah, you know, funny," and all this sort of thing. But since I became known nationally, due to it's just unrelenting misery. You know, the attacks and the accusations that you're child molester, paedophile, dangerous, you're deluded, you don't know what you're doing, people are laughing at you, and it chips away at the very fabric of who you are. And I know, and I fight this all the time. It has definitely, it's made me more prickly, it's made me more defensive and suspicious of people. I sometimes get invited to do talks at women's groups or whatever, and if I get involved, I shouldn't be, but I get terrified, and I know I wouldn't have been, say 10 years ago. It would have been fine because I'd have just gone in there and I'd have been cool. But the climate has changed so much that you start to think, well, is Twitter right? You know, do all these people in this room think that trans people are child molesters and dangerous? I don't know. It's a horrible state of mind to be in, but that's what happens when you just have one perspective on people.
Exactly, and sadly the smallest minds produce the loudest voices for some reason, especially on Twitter, and it takes ages to get these people removed, or you know, you get a message back saying this does not violate our standards, and you think, what?
I know.
What?
Richard, I've just done some. I'm gonna. All right, I'm just gonna be blunt about this. I mean, it distresses me, but I'm going to say it just to let people know who listen to you. Now, look, I'm just an ordinary person. I just want to live my life. So yesterday, I was on the end of all this abuse, as I mentioned at the start. I've now come off social media for a while, and this person sent me, and one of the messages was, call yourself what you like, dude, but when you're lying on the mortuary slab, the doctor will know that you've had your dick removed and that you're a guy, you're a man, you'll always be a man. So I thought that, well, it's dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful. Why do I have to enjoy that? So I thought, right, you can't report everybody, but I'm reporting that one
Yeah.
because it's just like vile. And I've just got a message back from Twitter this morning. This tweet did not violate
Oh my God.
our code of thing. And so that leaves you thinking, what at what level can you say something about trans people that is deemed unacceptable? What is
Yeah,
what is
and why
actually
is that
worse?
acceptable?
What is worse than that to say about trans people that they would say, oh yeah, that's unacceptable? There isn't anything.
That's genuinely
It's the
heartbreaking.
Wild West. Yeah.
And you're having to, you and the community are having to put up with that. And
Yeah.
as I say, fight, not daily, not hourly, every minute, just to
It's
be who you are. And
yeah.
it's so sad.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that changed about me is once I became known, you have to become an expert in so many areas because you have to be a barrister, you have to be a politician, you have to know all the medical register and all this sort of thing because you're constantly defending yourself or justifying yourself. And even we go back to, when I was talking about gay men in the 70s only get one role. The only role where you see, certainly in my line of work on TV, is when a trans person is put in the dock on TV. It's a discussion about whether trans people are dangerous or whether they're deluded or how can kids possibly know. So that isn't even anything I'm interested in. I like comedy, I like football, I like, popular culture, all that sort of thing. But I find myself put in this frame and how do you escape it? If that's the only reason, that you get to work on TV is to be the trans defendant in the dock on trial. It's ludicrous. You would not put. Imagine if we lived in a world where the only time you saw a gay man on the news was defending gay men against accusations of paedophilia or promiscuity
The promiscuity
or
one has come up
being
a
dirty.
lot. I did used to think that whenever there was a gay man on the
Yeah.
TV, going back maybe 10 years or whatever,
Yeah.
it was always in a storyline where they've cheated or...
Exactly.
It was
It's
never
how.
a nice, happy relationship.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable. That must have been uncomfortable for you, Richard.
It did play on it,
You-
because it was like,
you-
hang on, we're normal people.
Yeah,
Some
exactly.
of us cheat, some of
Yeah.
us don't cheat. Some of us are
Yeah.
promiscuous, some of us aren't.
Yeah,
We're just as, and I'm using the word now, normal. We're just as normal as everyone else. We just love other people.
yeah, exactly. But this is why it makes my blood boil when all these lobbies in media land and TV land they're all backslapping each other, saying, "Oh yeah, aren't we really great at diversity?" And
There's no one to
sure,
represent
they're
that
they're not.
3-year-old.
They're not. It's tick boxing. Diversity in TV land at the moment is strictly skin color. That's all they're interested in. It's purely like an aesthetic, cosmetic, visual thing to show the world, and this is what it's all about. They just want to show the world. It's virtue signaling. They want to show the world. Look, we're diverse. We're diverse. You can't show diversity of, gay or trans people simply by showing an image. Because if they've got their gob shut and they're not saying anything, you don't know that they're diverse. So TV are so simplistic. They need to flag it up and ram it in your face. But it's so unfair. And of course there should be diversity for all, skin colour and other things. But at the moment, it's too cosy. TV
Our
think,
trans
oh well,
community's suffering. Obviously, our trans community's being let down, is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing. And that's, as I say, it's diabolically heartbreaking. It's disgusting, because
Yeah.
what about that 3-year-old that knows there's something that they're not presenting to the world, and they've got no one to look at and say, oh, hang on, so I do exist.
yeah,
They've got no one to do that. My partner and I were turned down for fostering because, and I know it's not trans, although, like as you say, Stonewall
Yeah.
probably class it as trans. They turned us down for fostering because there was a video online on YouTube where we were wearing wigs and heels. And
Wow.
it broke our hearts, because we were like, well, what about... Because I said to them afterwards, well, heaven forbid you get a child that likes to wear heels and wigs and have a dance around and a laugh, because that's
Yeah.
all we were doing, having a laugh at the beginning of lockdown, trying to entertain the people that
Yeah.
were sat at home. And they turned us down for it. There was nothing wrong.
Do you know what? I feel so much for you there, Richard. And I think you're right. I think that in a way you're saying it's nothing to do with trans. I think it is to do with trans, because it's part of this narrative that, trans people are men in dresses. Men in dresses are paedophiles, are child molesters. And there was probably somebody on that panel, or in someone in that chain of decision making, that had that seed, planted in their head by what they read in the Times, the Daily Mail, or they watch on TV every day. And it's just disgusting. Honestly, it disgusts me.
Are you aware of the J.K. Rowling saga?
Yeah.
What?
Totally.
Because I've tried to stay out of that. I don't know too much about it. Just that is it women only spaces that she's talking about?
Yeah. She basically, she says what I've just said there. She views trans women as men in dresses. She uses obviously she's a writer, so she chooses her words very carefully. But it's very obvious, and there are certain references that she makes that are known within the trans world, which are very hurtful, which wouldn't be picked up on in the outside world. But her general view is that trans people are not women, that nobody is born trans, it is a choice, and that there shouldn't be any help for trans kids, that trans kids will become gay or lesbian. Honestly, guys, hand on heart, I've never had a gay or lesbian thought in my life. And do you know what? If I could choose between being straight, gay, or trans would be the bottom one by a mile, because it's just so hard. So her thoughts, and again, with J.K. Rowling, she predicates all this on the fact that she suffered domestic abuse at the hands of a man in her first relationship. Now, this is a bit like me being accused of being Michael Jackson last night. What's Michael Jackson or a man abusing his wife got to do with me? It's nothing. Exactly. But it's pitchforks and lanterns.
And it also kind of shuts it down, so nobody feels they can get involved on the other side, because, oh no, you can't question her. She's been through domestic abuse, which is disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. That's what she tries to use. And then she also comes out with this ludicrous thing, saying, trans people, they've cancelled me, they're shutting me down. And I'm saying, hold on a sec, this is a billionaire author who can cough and sneeze on the subject, and it will be on the front page of every paper. She only has to click her fingers. She could be on Oprah, she could be on any programme in the world, and she claims she's being cancelled when there isn't a single trans person in the media.
Well, again, the loudest voices are the ones that scream that they've been cancelled.
It's just obscene. And she'll use, one of her famous lines was, I have no problem with trans people. Sleep with whoever will have you.
Oh.
Well, that's a bit of a backhanded compliment, isn't it, JK? So
I think that's not understanding what trans means, maybe. That seems really...
Yeah, but even the implication that sleep with whoever will have you sort of implies that you're inferior and bottom of the rung.
Yeah.
And she made a reference about clownfish. Well, clownfish, again, people in the normal world will say, well, what's wrong with mentioning clownfish? No problem whatsoever. But clownfish is a slur that the radical feminists, who are gender Nazis, I'm just going to be honest about it, they have used against trans people, because clownfish change sex.
Yeah.
But obviously they're called clowns. Mm-hmm. So this is something that is used by the real hardcore anti-trans lobby against things. And guess who uses that phrase too? And people say, oh, well, she just mentioned a fish. But this is like the best analogy I could give you, right? If somebody left, if me and you woke up tomorrow morning, separate houses, of course, but if me and you woke up tomorrow morning and we opened our front door and there was a banana on our doormat, we would think nothing of it. We'd think, what's a bloody banana doing
Yeah.
here? We would just dismiss it. But if me and you were black in maybe an area where there was a lot of hostility to black people, and maybe there was a poster opposite saying, I heart Tommy Robinson, and you opened your door and there was a banana on your doormat, you'd take it differently, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
So all of these things which and I understand why they don't get it, why the mainstream public say, well, what was JK said that's so bad? JK is a skilled wordsmith. She knows the vocabulary of people who do not like trans people. And this is why, but nobody listens to us. This is why 99% of trans people are angry with that. Yeah. If 99% of gay people said that person is a homophobe, guess what? They're probably a homophobe and the gay population are correct. If 99% of black people said that person over there is a racist, again, are you arguing with 99% of black people? So why is it
this is the problem.
There's trans is just dismissed?
Exactly. The people speaking on the trans issue aren't trans. That they get out there anyway on the media, like you say, and the loudest voices on social media.
Yeah.
A lot of them are not trans or women, so they're not arguing. They're not arguing from any kind of knowledge of being trans or being a woman that suffered at the hands of a man, which is completely removed anyway.
Yeah, it's a complete mess. And on the other side, as I said earlier on in this chat, LGBT haven't done themselves any favours, and you get ridiculous characters. I mean, I did a famous one that's, I think it's had 1 million odd views on YouTube when I was on with Piers Morgan, Good Morning Britain, and a guy called Benjamin Butterworth, who works for Pink News. And Benjamin isn't trans. He's a gay guy, and I'm sure his heart is in the right place on gay issues. But we were on debating trans, and I was basically making the point that a lot of the wounds are just be quiet, LGBT. You're making things worse by a lot of the policies, that you're pushing, and the things that you're saying, that women have penises and all this. It's just dreadful. It's just dreadful. The public ain't buying into it. And I sat there next to Benjamin, the gay guy, who then told me the complete opposite. He told me what trans was. He told me what trans women felt, what trans women think, how hard it was to be trans. And there's something wrong with that, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, because if I was on there telling Benjamin how to be a gay guy and what the priorities were for gay men, it would be preposterous. Yeah. Yet that's what happens. And the other TV scenario is, if they discuss trans, sometimes, and this is really common, they won't even invite a trans person to be there. They will have the presenter, they will have the anti-trans panel, and they will debate us like lab rats with not a trans person within 100 yards of the conversation.
It's just, and yet those people will be believed. It's really shocking and strange.
If you're an ordinary, viewer at home with your TV dinner and you're lying there, if that's all that's fed to you, you're not even thinking. You're just taking it as gospel.
It's really sad.
Honestly, I feel so helpless at the moment, and it is just so unfair. I mean, in a way, I'm lucky in that I've transitioned now, and I don't have any hang-ups. I'm really happy in myself, and life is great, no regrets. But I think it mean if I was that 6 or 7 year old now, just becoming aware of what it's like in the world for people like me, I don't know, it would repress me even more. Exactly. I would want to hide. I wouldn't want to confide in anyone. And surely that's what we, again, TV, all this hypocrisy about, it's good to talk and all that. They're doing the complete opposite with trans people. They're shutting them down. They're saying, don't talk. You're not invited. Don't come here.
Yeah, completely. Oh God, it's horrendous. It sounds horrible. It's horrendous to hear your words, and I don't mean that in a nasty way. I don't mean it in a really reaching out to you, to the trans community. If it only was easy enough for me to say, please come forward. You're not being given that voice.
Yeah. No.
All of that being
Just
said,
shut out.
it was lovely to hear you on Ian Dale's show the other night on Cross Question.
Oh yeah, that
you
was
weren't
good.
on there as a trans woman.
Exactly, and that was nice. Yeah, and I do. I did talk radio on Saturday morning with my friend Kevin O'Sullivan for 3 hours, and trans wasn't a topic, which is great, and that's how it should be. But those occasions are few and far between, and there is only really me doing it, and that can't be right. I just know I'm not the only trans person in Great Britain that is capable of working on the media.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So where are they all?
They need to get out there. Come forward.
Well, I think they are. I think they maybe are coming forward,
It's
Richard.
a scary thing.
But
Really scary.
people won't take them on because of this sinister narrative that's woven, that they're dangerous, they're a threat, and then you get the mockery side. We haven't even talked about that trans people are still a figure of fun. I think that the bravest people in the world are the trans people who don't look like the sex they're transitioning. But it's got nothing to... Again, a lot of people think that trans is all about appearance and clothes, and it's not that. It's just about who you are inside. And I have the utmost respect. If there's a trans woman who is maybe 6'3", built like a rugby player, but that's who they are inside. It doesn't make them a paedophile or anything like this. But you think of the life that person leads when they get laughed at in the street or getting on a bus. It's horrendous.
When I'm driving down the street and I see a trans woman that maybe fits a similar description, I do. I think, oh God, you're so brave, and the life that you and I hope you've got someone to talk to, and a friend or a support network of some kind, because that's a scary place to be, trapped in your own head.
It is,
with all these nasty messages, and like the media messages that trans people are bad, trans people are dangerous. It's
and this is the why, again, that the critics come out with this all the time, and it's only a half truth. They don't explain. So the people who are really vehemently anti-trans will say, oh well, transitioning doesn't work, look at the figures, 40% of trans people contemplate suicide, and they leave it at that, implying that they're contemplating suicide because they're trans. No, that's not why they're contemplating suicide. They're contemplating suicide because you're laughing at them. You're taking the mick. You're making their life harder. And when that happens day after day after day, then you get any person would get depressed and down in the dumps. And that's why life is so hard for trans people. It's not because they're trans. It's how they're treated.
We're talking about trans people. Do you think trans men have an easier ride?
They do, absolutely. Again, I find this really interesting because obviously I've lived on both sides of the fence, and you have all these stereotypes, that women are the gentler, caring, more sympathetic side, and I think that is actually true. I'm a great believer that there's always like a little thread of truth, in stereotypes. Sure, don't overblow them and make them a complete caricature, but there's always like a little thread of truth in that. And I think generally speaking, women are more empathetic and caring and what have you. But, and I think we all know this, certain types of women are 1,000 times more vicious and nasty than men. Women have a different type of violence. I don't know whether you would agree with this, Richard. I think guys, if they have a beef about something or a problem with an individual, they're quite blunt. They will say it, and then you might have an argument, and then it's done. That it's over. But with women, women don't have physical violence. Women have verbal violence, and they're very good at it. They plant seeds there. They, for want of a better word, they shit stir, and it's like a bitchy type of thing. And again, I'm not saying, please don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about a small percentage. Just as there is a percentage of men who behave despicably, there is a percentage of women who behave despicably. The idea that all women are lovely, and I'm sure my sisters in offices and shops up and down the country will concur with me on this. All women are not nice. But their viciousness is with language. And in a way, it's worse. I would rather be beaten up than physically beaten up than endure what I go through on a day-to-day basis, every day of my life on social media. Because you get beaten up and then it's over, you recover. Whereas the violence that these radical feminists perpetuate is potentially lethal. Again, I'm not exaggerating. I don't think I will go there because I am secure in myself. I get upset about comments like the one that I read out earlier on, which was disgusting. Yeah. But there are lots of trans people out there who don't have my certainty and security in life. And going through that every day, I know they're only words, it chips away at you. And they say, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. That's not true. The words are infinitely more terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can attest to that. In many ways. So what about going back a few years? What about Celebrity Big Brother? Were you open to abuse after that? Before that? During that?
Well, leading up to Big Brother, it was fantastic. My dream programme to do. I was really looking forward to it. And obviously, every Big Brother has a theme, and that year it was Year of the Woman. Yeah. So it was great to be invited on that, and I didn't have any problems whatsoever. I'd never been trolled on social media. I'd never had any hassle in real life. It was tickety-boo. Everything was going great. But then when I went in, I won't, it's a boring story now because I've told it so many times, but Rachel Johnson, Boris Johnson's sister, and Anne Widdecombe, the MP, just started misgendering me within half an hour or so. On the Year of the Woman, where the only entrants for the first week were women. Yeah, so this is only 3 years ago as well. It's incredible. So they were.
All it was.
Yeah, they were openly calling me he and him. Quite openly.
How much does that hurt, being misgendered?
It hurts a lot. It's the worst thing you can say. Yeah. It's the equivalent of the N-word to a black person.
Yeah, I know my friend has been misgendered quite a few times, and I never used to get it as I should have done.
Yeah.
I used to think, just push it off, don't listen to them, but it's not as easy as that.
Yeah, I understand why, again, I'm going to use that word, normal people feel that way, because I guess most people at some point, from the back or a certain angle, they may have been misgendered, but it's not a big thing to them. But I think what people have to understand is that for trans people, the most sensitive spot, the wound that they carry through life all the time, and it never heals really, is that they were born in the wrong body. So by misgendering them, it is a dagger. If you had to think of the worst way deliberately to hurt a trans person, it would be calling them he or him. A trans woman, that is, or if it was a trans man, her or she. That is the most painful thing. And we can't help that. We're just telling you that is what's most painful.
Yeah. So
to
there's
us.
no need to try and fix it
So
and
so
say, don't
so,
listen. There's no
yeah.
need.
So
You've
why
been
do
hurt.
it? You know, these people say, "Oh well, it's my right to call you what I like." Well, is it your right to use the N word or maybe the F word about gay people?
The freedom of speech argument.
Yeah, it's not. So when I went in Big Brother, honestly, I was so happy. I could cry thinking about it now. I was so happy. It was my favourite programme. I'd had my hair and makeup done. I thought this is going to be a great experience. Looked forward to it all the time. And then I have Rachel Johnson and Anne Widdecombe misgendering me openly in company. So I thought, how do I handle? Because it had never happened to me before.
And
I
no
thought,
support network.
Yeah,
Immediate friends, family.
well, you're in the house, you're alone. So the first day I took Anne Widdecombe aside, and it wasn't like a shouty thing. I just said to her nice, I said, look, I don't know whether you were aware, you said it earlier on, but you know, you were calling me he and him, and being trans, it's really upsetting. Would it be, you know, could you not do it in future? And she sort of nodded and shuffled off without saying a little thing. But it carried on happening. So by day 2, it had happened at least 100 times. And then when it happened for the 101st time, I just blew my top. Mm-hmm. Because what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just sit there?
And like you said, it's Year of the Woman.
And and just let it happen. But the weird thing is, even though that was only 3 years ago, I was cast as I became the baddie for actually speaking up about it. I don't think that would be the case now. But there were newspaper headlines saying, why is she getting so upset about me being misgendered? You know, misgendered is nothing. You know, she's making a molehill. They just didn't get it. They didn't get it at all. But I was the baddie for saying, hold on, that's not acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have referred to them in different terms, I'm sure you would have still been the baddie.
Well,
you couldn't win, almost.
You can't win. The simplest way to illustrate it is that you couldn't show that season of Big Brother now. Because from the very start, the level of transphobic stuff is just dreadful.
So what are your views actually on Big Brother, on, is it Endemol or something, on showing those scenes? Showing, and maybe the way that they showed them?
Well, I work in TV, so I'm under no illusion that obviously it makes good TV. I think Endemol and the people who worked on it didn't really get it either. I think they thought that I was overreacting.
So that just again goes to
nothing.
Show that there's a massive lack of representation.
It's a lack of representation and a lack of understanding what trans actually is. Because again, you know, after the first week, and I think we might get onto this subject now, and I'll try and explain it as best I can from my point of view. So after the first week, when you're on Big Brother, they have a house psychologist who's a lovely guy, also called Richard, funnily enough, lovely guy.
It's not.
And obviously it's, and I say this to this day, I still love Big Brother, by the way, it's fantastic, but it is the toughest reality show, harder than living on an island or anything. There is nothing compares with being locked in a room with a group of people who've been specifically selected to wind you up with no escape. It's Guantanamo Bay levels of torture. So after the first week, because I eventually stood up for myself, the rest of the women, which again was interesting, you had like strong women, you know, the Anne Widdecombe's and the Rachel Johnsons, and you had these other women in there who were sheep, who didn't want conflict.
Yeah.
So I think they sort of looked around and said, well, oh God, I better stay safe. I don't want to get, you know, blah, blah, blah. So they shuffled off like sheep, you know, on the side of Anne Widdecombe and things. I was completely isolated in the house. I was on my own. And I think they could tell that was happening. So they have a duty of care. And on Big Brother, why they never interfere with the plot or, you know, what's actually happening in the house, you know, what's being discussed. If somebody is under stress, they will call them to the diary room, and they will have Richard, that's the psychologist, on the other end. And this isn't for broadcast, it's just them doing their duty of care. And Richard says, "Are you okay, Indy? You know, how are you feeling?" And you have, you know, a little chat, and hopefully you feel better. Yeah. It's for your mental health. And I love it. I'm friends with Richard, by the way, the psychologist now. He's a lovely guy. But I remember, and this the point we were talking about there was like the lack of understanding of what trans actually is by Endemol. So we had a chat this day about a week or so through, and he said, "Oh, don't worry." He said, "Things are going to change. You know, somebody's coming into the house, and you'll have a bit of support on your side."
I know what you're going to say.
And I thought, oh, great. You know, a bit of trans support. This is going to be great. And it was a drag queen.
Shane Janik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
it's
what?
Completely different.
What?
In fact, it's not even completely different. It's quite
it's
insulting
worse.
that they said that.
Yeah. It's completely different. So that stressed me out even more. But yeah, hopefully, you know, well, I'm saying hopefully people in TV are more aware. They're not, because of the reasons I've said. There are no trans people.
There needs to be. In fact, one thing that I've learned through this conversation is that as an ally, I need to speak up much, much more. I've spoken to people on the podcast that won't touch the trans issues, in inverted commas, because they're too scared of the backlash. Well,
exactly. Well,
this is. I promise you that will stop with me.
Well, listen, I agree with what you've just said there, but this is a part of the marginalisation that is going on, in that people are scared to go near trans people now, either in a conversation or physically. Earlier this year, I don't know if you know this, and this is factually true, the BBC last year, ahead of, I know Pride was cancelled, but ahead of the Pride season, the BBC issued an edict to all of its staff that when they were attending Pride, not to be seen associating with trans people, because it could be inferred that the organisation was supporting trans people.
Bloody hell.
Now just think about that for a minute. How isolating is that? You're an employee of a massive organisation, and you're told you don't hang around with this type of person because it looks as if you're supporting them. So that again plants a little seed, very tiny seed, in people. Stay away from trans people.
It's crazy, because I feel the need now, completely removed from the trans issue, as I see it, to say, I understand male violence on women.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating that, but I'm very much a trans ally, and I always will be. And I shouldn't need to feel the need to say that, because they're two completely different things.
They're two completely.
And yet I'm sat here now thinking,
different things.
Oh yeah, what will be the backlash? But
yeah,
I shouldn't care.
The thing is, Richard,
not to care.
Do you know what, Richard? There's lots about, you know, trans campaigns and policies that I disagree with, and I have no problem with other people being critical of things to do with trans. That is fine. But what I do have a problem with is when you are actually demonising a group of people and festering hate. I can disagree with you on something, like let's say a gay issue.
We got into politics, let's say you probably would.
and we could have a chat about it. We could disagree on that, but that doesn't mean that I am then going to go on Twitter or write a newspaper article or do a TV broadcast, essentially saying gay people are bad, they're dangerous, stay away. That's completely nothing to do with critiquing something about that. That is different level. That is demonisation.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's very lonely, Richard. It's so lonely.
I bet it is. And so going back to the representation on TV and stuff, in the media, who are your heroes? Did you have any?
Like
trans heroes?
Not well. There's never been any.
See, that's the problem.
To this day, there's never been any. So, end of that topic.
And it wasn't that long ago that Little Britain finished. And
yeah, well,
there was a lot of... I can't believe, thinking back to some of the characters
again,
on there.
I'm a lady, with the beard and all that sort of thing. Yeah, there hasn't been any, is the simple answer.
So who are your heroes in life, then?
Well, I like, on the trans side, I think Caitlyn Jenner is okay, actually. I had the pleasure of meeting her and having...
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I had drinks with her about 3 years ago.
Oh my God!
When
I'm
she
not a
was
Kardashian. I wouldn't know a Kardashian if I fell over them, but Caitlyn, I've known from the jungle.
And she's I think me and her probably have got very similar perspectives. On how things should be, and I think she actually gets a really bad rap from the LGBT side because she's... Well, I don't get this bit either,
she's got money.
Because she's got money. Apparently, you're not allowed to be LGBT if you're to the right. You've got money, and you're kicked out, which I don't understand. But she was really nice. But other than that, I think my life hero, well, probably my granddad, who I call my pop. He was great. He was a real character. But on TV and what have you, just ordinary people. I love it. I love football. So I like Eric Cantona, who's a bit of a maverick. A great player, but not afraid to say outrageous things. Can I swear on this podcast or not?
Yeah, I said bollocks before.
Yeah. Well, it's actually Eric Cantona's birthday on the day that we're recording. This is 55th birthday.
Happy birthday.
And I was looking online, and there was a clip of him giving this. He was being interviewed by journalists. It was after his famous kung fu kick, when he launched himself into the crowd and attacked this individual who'd been saying nasty things about his mother. And so a couple of months on, he was giving this TV interview, and it's just wild. He says to these reporters, he says, yes, I've been banned, but I will be forgiven. The Catholics murdered 200,000 million people, but they were forgiven. So why won't I? I piss in the Pope's asshole, and I piss in your eyes. Now, I would think that... Wow. It's a bit strong, isn't it? But isn't it great TV? Isn't that just terrific, having people like that in the world? They're just wonderful.
Say what's on their mind.
So I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So your wider family then? Did you say sisters before, or were you talking about the general public?
I was talking about the general public before, but I do have a sister.
Yeah. And do you get on well with your family?
Yeah. Funnily enough, me and my sister, Katie, as the old me, we fought like cat and dog.
Yeah.
Oh, and we've in lots of ways we're chalk and cheese. The sort of clothes we like, the things we're interested in, chalk and cheese. But when I actually decided to finally come out to everyone, I thought, how am I going to do this? And I was thinking, I can't do this unless I have a bit of support. This is at the point when nobody knew about me. So I sat down and I thought, right, I'm going to make a list of people most likely to be on my side, and I'm going to go in descending order, because at least then I will have some people who have said, we're fine, we still love you and all that sort of stuff. So top of the list was my mum, obviously, and she did as I expected, totally on side and supported me. But bottom of the list was my sister, because I thought, I'm probably going to lose Katie. We've fought all our lives. We see everything we disagree on, just everything. And do you know what, Richard? She has had my back from day one.
The fact that you thought that you had to think that for people that you may lose. Oh God, that's gut wrenching.
Yeah, I'm getting upset now, and I wasn't expecting to.
It's really, really sad. Me too.
I forget how hard it was. Whew.
you've been through so much, and you've fought your way through.
Well, this is it. Everyone thinks that trans is all about fun and, oh, it's like a choice and having a laugh and what have you. Trans is, and I'm not denigrating gay people or lesbian people, because I know it's, depending on your situation and where you live and what sort of family you have, it's equally, a tough thing to go through. But I think when you're actually telling someone that you're going to change, physically, your name is going to change, all that sort of stuff. I think it's so out there that some people can't get their heads around it, and that's why, sadly, nearly all trans people will lose some friends or family as a result of doing it. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. Yeah.
Oh, God, I mean, it sounds glib to say, but I didn't expect to get upset during this conversation. But that just really floors me. That you made a list of people, and there's people on that list that you thought you might lose.
Yeah.
Just for saying, this is me.
Yeah. That's right.
This is me. I mean, I suppose for those people there is a grieving process, but then for you there's a grieving process. Saying goodbye to maybe a big part of their life, your mum's little boy, for example, but she knew straight away, and she was accepting straight away, is just beautiful.
Yeah. Well, my mum was, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. My mum was upset because it was, and you've used the word grieving there. That's what it is. It's a death. You're saying that this person is either dead or is about to die, and you're never going to see them again. So I think for any parent, even the really supportive ones, and thankfully more parents are supportive these days, it's a sad time, because they might have wanted, I know my mum, again, this is what makes me so bad when it makes me so annoyed when I hear these people say, oh, well, you're trans because your mum wanted a girl, and she made you play with dolls, or she wanted all this. I couldn't be farther from the truth, Richard. Honestly, my mum loved having a son. She loved the old me. That's what she wanted. She told me openly she wanted a son, and there was nothing in my childhood that was even slightly effeminate or camp or anything like that. There was just none of it. And yet, I am as I am, because that's just how I'm born. So when people say to me, that, oh, well, you're that way because your mum wanted a girl, it's the complete opposite.
No, my mum used to... See, people have said this about me, actually, because my mum used to plait my hair when we were sat in front of the TV. And when we grew up, I always say my two brothers had a mum, I had a friend. Best friend, and she
like
still
that.
is. She's
lovely.
She's going for a bit of a hard time at the minute. We're all going for a bit of a hard time, because of health reasons and stuff. But she's my best friend, and she will be until the end. So, it's lovely to.
That's how it should be, Richard.
She is amazing, and she's been amazing and so accepting of who I am. I disagree with you slightly when you say that it's almost on a par of coming out, because I've always, I think from very early on, I think remembering that it must be so hard to come out as trans. And I come from quite a working class background, very bullied in school. Being gay was so it wasn't easy, but I still think it must be so hard to come out as trans, because of maybe that grieving thing, because people are actually saying goodbye to this person and they can't get their head around it, and because of the underrepresentation as well, because we're not being shown it as normal life.
Well, maybe I was being a bit polite saying it was the same as being gay or lesbian. I think the hardest bit for me at that time was I didn't want to be laughed at.
Yeah.
I think trans people, and this is universal, they just want to be seen for who they are and as serious. It's not a dress-up game. They're not doing it for kicks or to get their jollies or anything. It's who they are.
Now, I'm aware that we're chatting for ages and ages and I could go on all day. I just want to ask one question. Do you ever miss... Jonathan, were you born?
Yes.
Do you miss Jonathan?
No, I don't miss him in that way. I've got zero regrets. But again, this is very emotional, and I've written a book, but I can't put it forward at the moment. But on my final night as Jonathan, when I was in hospital, I get upset here. I did say goodbye to him because he was a nice guy, you know. He had lots of friends, and I know that they were upset and what have you. So I don't miss him in that sense. I wish we had two bodies, and he could have carried on, and I could have gone on. But this is who I am. You know, Jonathan was just. It was.
Helping you.
He was real, and it's really complex. Obviously, as a kid, you don't want to. You know, I know my mum wanted a son, and you want to be that son and make them happy. But you can't, you know, you've got to be yourself. So yeah, he was, again, the other thing about trans is, it's okay, I'm composing myself a little bit more. No, you know, you hear all this stuff about trans people hating themselves and hating their bodies and all that. Yeah. Well, again, I can only speak for myself. It wasn't like that with me. I never hated Jonathan. I just knew he wasn't me. Even my body, I didn't hate it to the degree that, you know, I wanted to mutilate. I just knew it wasn't me. And when I went in, you know, to hospital and I had my surgery and everything, I could tell the next day, everyone was really curious, all my friends and what have you, how I felt, you know. I think they were expecting that I would come out like a brand new person. But honestly, it was literally like going to the dentist and having a tooth out. For me, it was more of a thing for them. Because I and I think this applies to every trans person who goes through the transition process, they've known who they are, you know, for years. So it's not a surprise, you know, nothing dramatic happens. It's just a relief that you are aligned with who you are.
I want to ask you a question away from the trans issue now.
Yeah.
What do you do for hobbies? What's your favourite things to do?
Oh, just well, I'm a slob. I love watching TV. I will watch anything on the telly. You know, subtitle, just every genre going. I've actually gone off reality TV a bit. What? I used to be massively, I used to be massively.
Big Brother, and Big Brother for me was it every year.
Oh yeah.
Now I don't watch any reality TV. I watched the Jungle. Well, I watched the Castle as it was last year. That's just down the road from me. I watched that last year.
Oh, was it? Right. Because I think they're going to be doing Wales again this year, aren't they?
Oh, are they? Oh, okay.
I think so, because of the COVID situation.
I now work right opposite that castle, so that'd be great.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. I'll tell you what is an interesting little tidbit said there. When I came out as Celebrity Big Brother, I got offered this other reality show, and it was Celebrity Naked Attraction. Which never went ahead.
Well, I'm talking to somebody that did that next week.
Really? Well, it didn't go ahead in the end. They had certain people lined up. Oh, actually, are you talking about Lauren?
Lauren, yeah.
Well, yeah, it wasn't a celebrity edition.
It wasn't, Lauren was it? And I was really shocked when it came up and it was Lauren. And I was like, okay,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. I think they did get a good audience because Lauren was on it.
Yeah.
But no, this was going to be something that they were doing for Stand Up for Cancer. I don't know if you know Channel 4 so they'll take something like Countdown and do a Stand Up for Cancer. So they were going to do Naked Attraction, Celebrity Naked Attraction.
Did you say
and
no?
Do you know what? It was so strange. I love watching Naked Attraction. It's one of my guilty pleasures. And I always wonder, what sort of people would you go on it?
I would love to go on it.
Oh my God.
Have a halfway, let me know.
you've got a brass neck and something else as well, if you're willing to go on that. So when I got the invite, I was initially, I can remember going, yes, this is going to be great. This is going to be such a laugh. But then overnight, it sort of dawned on me, because they'd made it clear that there wasn't going to be any difference between the celebrity one, and it wasn't like you could go on and the bits and pieces would be blurred out. It would be as normal. So I cooled on it. I chickened out the second day. I think they had somebody from, I forget which one it was because I don't watch the show. Somebody from Geordie Shore was, not surprisingly, all up for it, and they wanted to do it. They asked somebody, I think it was, who's the biscuit guy from Made in Chelsea?
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that in the papers.
Oh, what
Jamie
he's
Lang,
called?
is it?
Jamie Lang. Yeah. That's it. I think they asked Jamie Lang. Yeah. Get your crackers out, and or your ginger nuts. Your ginger nuts.
Well, they would be, wouldn't they?
And I think he'd been mulling it over, and then changed his mind.
There's already pictures of him out there, I think. So
that's right. So that was a show that never saw the light of day, unfortunately. But who knows? They might come back and do one.
Do you know what? Jokes aside, I actually think that program is brilliant for people, for teenagers and stuff, because they can see that all different body shapes and all different sizes are attractive to different people. And I know that gets laughed at because my mum laughed at me when I said that. When I said, no, I genuinely think it's a good thing to show people all the different types of body so they can look at themselves and go, okay, this is normal.
I think you're right, and things like that. I've got to hold my hand up and say, and it's just a generational thing. I am probably more on the prudish side, but I do agree. I think that is a good thing, especially I think the less repressed people are about these things, the better generally. It's not for me personally, but that's just because I'm of a certain age and a certain generation. But I think for people coming through, if we're going to end up living in a world where just people are more comfortable being themselves, and whatever issues they've got, because the other thing about the media is, and it still happens now, they have all these campaigns, like I was watching one this morning, they were flagging up on Loose Women, shock and surprise, doing a body positivity campaign. But even there, where they're doing a body positivity campaign, the final shots, please don't tell me they've not been airbrushed. They have. You can tell. They have. They've been polished. Everyone's looking great. So even when you're doing a body positivity thing, you're having to tweak the pictures. It's not real and honest. We've all got bits of our bod, that we don't like, whether it's like, I don't know, it could be a mole or, a bit of flab or a scar, something like that. But we still don't really see truly honest pictures anymore. Look at the kerfuffle with the Kardashians. I mean, I've never watched the Kardashians either, but a couple of weeks ago, was it Khloe Kardashian or Kourtney Kardashian? One of the bigwigs. They'd had a pool party at their house, and one of the assistants, the helpers, the runners, had just taken an innocent snap of, I think it was Khloe Kardashian, by the pool, and she looked great. She looked terrific. Oh my God, to look like Khloe. And she posted it innocently on Instagram, and the world blew up. Her people, the Kardashian people, went nuts because all of their photos, even the supposedly spontaneous casual ones, where they're buying a coffee or whatever, they're all airbrushed, they're all posed, they're all staged.
Wow, that's just crazy.
Nobody can live like that. But as a young person, that is the expectation. That it would be a lot. Oh, it'd be so hard being young. Imagine being 14 or 15.
Well, I texted my niece the other day. She's 13. She's just turned 13 in February. Yeah. And I said, "You look beautiful today." I finally got to see her after so long. And I said, "You look beautiful today. Send me a picture." And she sent me a picture all filtered and everything. I said, "Grace, you're absolutely beautiful. Please send me a picture without the filters." And it took her ages to do it. And I just thought, oh my God, please appreciate your beauty. You're so gorgeous.
Yeah.
Just being you is beautiful, and her personality and everything is. Like, she's growing into such a lovely young woman. She's so gorgeous. But she felt the need to put all these filters on.
I know. So it's such a shame, but that's the pressure, Richard, isn't it? Of everything that's around. You see all these beautiful faces, and great teeth as well is the other thing now, and that's the standard. And if you don't feel in yourself you're achieving that, then you beat yourself up, and that's horrible. It's just like self-destruction.
Yeah.
So I think still we don't do enough. TV is paying lip service.
Did you know this conversation's absolutely fascinating, and I could talk to you forever.
Great, I've loved chatting to you, Richard. It's been really good.
It's amazing. I'll bring it to an end because I know you're a busy woman. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. It's actually been, I feel absolutely honoured. Actually, some of the things that you've covered, and I just think, wow, you've taught me so much, and hopefully some of the listeners will get from it what I've got. I'm completely fascinated.
Great. Oh, well, that's good.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm glad you've been good. I'm really pleased that I did it as well, because, like I say, the last few days have been horrible with what's been going on social media. So it's been a good place to maybe vent a little bit and just, get things out my system.
You've got my details now, so you're always welcome to vent.
Great.
Thank you again.
All right.
I'll
Pleasure.
hopefully speak to you soon, because that's been gorgeous.
Lovely.
Take care of yourself.
All right. See you, Richard. Bye.
So you see, the benefit of having a good chat, a good talk, is invaluable. If you found any of the issues that we've talked about today distressing or upsetting in any way, then you can always get in contact on Twitter. I'm Richard Sefton 3. Or if you need to speak to somebody urgently, please call the Samaritans. There's no shame in it. 116 123, and they're literally just there waiting to take your call. There's other options as well. If you Google Mind, they have brilliant, can put yourself down for talking therapy. Just don't feel that you're alone. There's someone out there to listen to you. If you're in a position to be there for somebody else, listen to them. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening, and hope to see you next time on State of Mind with me, Richard Sefton.